Regulation G, Regulation G, Regulation G. What are we gonna do with you? May 1st, 2024, and we're moving into our first restricted format of Scarlet and Violet. It feels too early to be in a restricted format based on the game's life cycle, but all Scarlet and Violet formats have just been flying by, so perhaps this next one will too. However, Reg G isn't like most restricted formats, as it only allowed one restricted Pokemon on your team. In past formats, you typically get two. We did see this back in the Sword and Shield era, with a single restricted format, but it was relatively brief, and we soon moved off of it into a double restricted. Many people dread this cursed single restricted format, as back in Sword and Shield, we simply saw Zacian completely dominate the usage charts. Will something similar happen here? Will the most powerful restricted hog all the spotlight? Or will the power level amongst the strongest be somewhat balanced? Let's take a retrospective look at this truly divisive format. If you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe. Going into this format, many expected Calyrex Shadow to by far be the most dominant force in the metagame. With a base speed of 150, it was by far the fastest Pokemon in the format, aside from perhaps Regieleki. Maybe it could have a niche. Zacian was on the minds of many as it completely dominated the Sword and Shield era, but receiving two nerfs moving into Scarlet and Violet, with a reduction to its base attack and its ability only activating once per battle instead of every switch in. Will Zacian find the same success? Zamazenta was nerfed alongside Zacian, seemingly arbitrarily, so surely it won't see much usage, right? It wasn't used much back then. Miraidon and Koraidon are the new kids on the block, but they just don't seem to have the raw immediate offense that Calyrex has, and they seem reliant on their weather or terrain. They also don't have the same levels of bulk that the Gen 3 weather duo has, and they compete in a very crowded speed tier of 135, which can make choosing EV spreads difficult. They have some stiff competition in that 135 speed tier, as the other two Pokemon in it are Fluttermane and Chien-Pao, both of which have been very dominant in previous Scarlet and Violet formats, both of which hit Koraidon and Miraidon super effectively, and both of which can commonly run Focus Sash, so even if they move after these two, they can respond with a KO. However, the main thing holding these two back is that their signature moves are single target and not spread moves like most other restricted legendaries. Miraidon's is at least boosted by its own terrain and a stab attack, but Koraidon's collision course isn't even boosted by the sun, so it seems like Koraidon is struggling somewhere near the bottom. With the other new restricted Pokemon from the Indigo Disc DLC, Terrapagos has also hit the scene. With a powerful ability and terrestrialization effect, it's expected to do well. Kyogre and Groudon, our former champions, are likely to see some success as well. They've been so strong for so long. Surely that will continue. Calyrex I also has eyes on it. It was okay in Generation 8, but its awful typing really held it back. However, in Scarlet and Violet, with terrestrialization, bad typing is a thing of the past. And with stats like these, and a signature move like this, it's bound to do well. Also, unlike previous restricted formats, both Xerneas and Yveltal will not be making an appearance, as they're not in the game. A Terra Fairy, Geomancy boosted, Fairy Aura boosted, Beads of Ruin boosted, Dazzling Gleam from Xerneas is not something anyone was looking forward to. But without Yveltal, both forms of Calyrex have a much better matchup into other restricted Pokemon, as Dark types were their main weakness. Despite Regulation G being a restricted format, there are still other non-restricted Pokemon that you need to fill your team with. Will Regulation F favorites like Fluttermane, Ogerpon, Raging Bolt, Landorus, and many others still hold up? What about the tried and true pairings like Chien-Pao Dragonite or Tornadus Urshifu? The classic pivot Pokemon in Incineroar and Rillaboom are sure to stick around, as well as staples like Urshifu and Amoonguss. But some of these other Pokemon may find themselves falling off. Restricted formats often see niche picks that are specifically good into popular restricted Pokemon. What will some of these be? For the first tournament, we find ourselves in North America, down in Indiana. But not just Indiana, Indianapolis. Calyrex Shadow was the most used restricted at the event, as expected. Enemy number 1, most players are using what they expect to be strong, but only a 0.5% more usage than its counterpart, Calyrex Ice. However, Calyrex Shadow's prevalence diminished moving into Day 2, and fell off even more moving into the top cut, not being seen once in the top 8 teams. It also looks like many players were using tried and true non-restricted picks as their first foray into the format. Incineroar hit 70% usage on Day 2, with Urshifu and Amoonguss both over 50%. As for Incineroar, keep in mind that both Calyrex are the most threatening restricteds in the format, and if you consider all of their stabs in Psychic, Ghost, and Ice, Incineroar resists or is immune to all of those, and is able to hit them hard with a powerful stab knockoff. So Incineroar usage is likely to stay high, while the Calyrexes remain dominant. Defying all expectations, however, the winning team piloted by Regen Ball used Miraidon, one of the newcomers who was expected to underperform. With Miraidon seemingly relatively middling offenses compared to the Calyrexes, he pushed its offense to the max with the Choice Specs and Terra Electric. Running Discharge with those and addition to its electric terrain, it gives it the stab spread move that it was missing. With a partner of Ursaluna Blood Moon and a Terra Ground Farigiraf, it has 2 allies to click this powerful spread move next to. Ogerpon Cornerstone also made an appearance on this winning team. This form of Ogerpon was all but written off in past formats, as Wellspring and Hearthflame were used much more. But it turns out when a Fire-type Incineroar is on nearly every team, a strong and accurate Rock Attack is very valuable. Not to mention a built-in Focus Sash in its ability of Sturdy, especially when all these restricted Pokemon can one-shot almost anything. May 11th, 2024. Moving into Stockholm Syndrome, Stockholm, Sweden, for our second tournament, we see a different restricted win the event. Michael Kelsch piloted Zamazenta to a victory. The legendary dog that didn't get much love at all in Sword and Shield, and was nerfed going into Scarlet and Violet, took the event. Turns out having a Steel typing with base 140 defenses, access to Wide Guard, and newly given access to a Stab Body Press, on top of getting a defense boost on Switch-In, is pretty powerful. Michael brings other unique picks on his team in Pelipper, Galarian Moltres, and Latios. While Pelipper was picking up in usage thanks to having Wide Guard and completely stonewalling Koraidon builds at the time, it was a solid pick. Latios with a Terra type of Steel has amazing defensive type synergy, and deals solid damage and had some speed control with Tailwind. Moltres was a hard-hitting Dark type that can wall out Calyrex Shadow. Speaking of our anticipated star player, where is Calyrex Shadow? It again finds itself absent from the top 8 teams. Many players are calling for it to be put on Fraud Watch, as in the first 2 tournaments it hasn't even cracked the top 8. With Wide Guard users and Pelipper and Zamazenta picking up significantly, these Pokemon with powerful signature spread moves are having trouble finding footing. Pelipper even found a higher usage than Urshifu in Day 2 being 40%. Moving down to South America on May 18th, we find ourselves in Santiago, Chile, where the weather isn't too chilly this time of year, turning out a pretty reasonable 153 players. Despite the smaller attendance, there's still some heavy hitters in the tournament, including Paul Ruiz, the 2018 World Champion. Although he doesn't take the event, he does find himself comfortably in the top 8. Both teams in the finals feature Zamazenta. The Latin America players seem to do quite well with this defensive dog. Hans Pizarro takes the win with a Chien Pao Zamazenta team, featuring Rillaboom and Ogerpon Hearthflame. Returning to North America, we find ourselves in Los Angeles, California, where our top 8 teams start to look very different. Our restricted winners so far in Miraidon and Zamazenta are both absent. The up-and-coming Turtle also finds itself without an invite, as the long-awaited Calyrex Shadow finally makes an appearance. Not only an appearance, but Montana Mott rides it to the finals, and takes the whole event. Calyrex Ice holds 3 of the top teams as well. But here we see Clefairy on the winning team. With the unique combination of Friend Guard and Follow Me, it's able to protect the team's centerpiece, Calyrex Shadow, from not only single target attacks, but also spread damage. This iconic core of Rillaboom, Incineroar, and Urshifu is nothing new, and is something we will not be saying goodbye to anytime soon. Notably, we do see a Zacian team in the top 8, as well as a few scattered throughout Day 2 teams, a Pokemon that hasn't really seen any success so far thanks to his nerf. With its wide offensive coverage, combined with its attack boost, and a sort of Ruin boost from Chien Pao, its single target damage is nothing to laugh at. And with the rise of Wide Guard users, being able to hit things with single target attacks is more valuable. Despite not landing in the top 8 teams, Miraidon was the most used restricted at the event, with the winning Terra Electric Choice Specs Discharge set by far being the most common. Incineroar has finally settled in usage at just over 40% for both days, with Raging Bolt rising to 32 on Day 2, and we see Urshifu at the lowest usage all format, sitting at just 26% on Day 1 and 22% on Day 2, a shockingly low statistic for the bear. As summer rolls around and we enter June, what better place for a tournament than Bologna, Italy, boasting a massive 898 players, making it the largest event thus far, a huge jump from the previous EU event in Stockholm, which had just 256. The Calyrex overlord that is Shadow Rider again takes the event, quieting the naysayers who put it on Fraud Watch earlier. Piloted by Ruben Gianzini, again we see it paired with Clefairy to allow it to stick on the field longer. Rather than using the common Incineroar, we see Chi-Yu take its place on this team, allowing Calyrex to dish out even more damage. And a very unique Chi-Yu at that. Terra Water with a Covert Cloak and Taunt, of all things. This with Tornadus gives the team strong speed control and the ability to deny opposing speed control. Rillaboom made a Grassy Glide into the public eye and stole the title of the most used Pokemon at Day 2, landing at 51% usage. Clefairy also made a huge surge with 29% usage in Day 2. This is not surprising as Calyrex usage also shot up to 30%, as almost every single Calyrex Shadow team included this pink little puffball. Mienshao was also seen on the winning team and had 17% usage on Day 2. The combination of Fake Out, Wide Guard, and Inner Focus for a Fake Out and Intimidate immunity is a very solid combination. Sadly though, this will be Mienshao's peak as the metagame will continue to adapt. Just 1 week later on June 7th, we find ourselves at the first international tournament of Regulation G. NAIC is held in its usual location of New Orleans, and it boasted 921 players, again breaking the record for the largest tournament yet. Being an international, it drew a number of top players from around the world. From local behemoths like Wolf Glick, Paul Chua, and Emilio Forbes, to European threats like Eric Rios, Marco Silva, and Michael Kelsch. Even strong competitors from Asia like Shiliang Tang, not to mention recent world champions like Eduardo Cunha. The competition here is fierce. Will a new Restricted take the win, or will one of the previous winners take another title? With Shadow Rider and Zamazenta at 2 wins each, with Miraidon at 1, it's time for a new Restricted to steal the spotlight. A new home turf competitor, Patrick Connors, guides Calyrex Ice to victory. Again, combined with that tried and true Firewater Grass core of Incineroar, Rillaboom, and Urshifu. The rest of the top 8 is split between Terapagos, Kyogre, and Miraidon, with just one Calyrex Shadow making its way through. In 8th place, we see a very unique pick in Overquill make an appearance. With a Life Orb and Swift Swim, when paired with Kyogre, this fellow fish is able to one-shot Calyrex Shadow with Crunch, deal solid damage to things like Rillaboom with Gunk Shot, and weaken foes with Acid Spray to allow its special attacking partners to follow up for big damage. With the end of the largest tournament yet in Pokemon history, it's time for a bit of a break. A 2.5-month break, in fact, before the most important tournament of the year, Worlds 2024. It felt like a whirlwind. Regulation G is already nearly coming to a close, with very few events overall. Truly a unique format. To even play at Worlds, you need to qualify, so usually Worlds has a lower attendance than some of the other large events, but this year, Worlds will still have a huge attendance, with 864 players qualified. Although there are no regionals in the 2 months before Worlds, players are still hard at work developing this relatively new metagame. As tides shift and the meta grows, 4 Restricteds emerge as far more dominant than the others. Calyrex Shadow and Ice continue to impose their dominance with incredible stats, ability to make great use of Terra, and they continue to be threats number 1 and 2. Miraidon, with its early success, continues to volt switch around the competition, picking up one-shots while maintaining its terrain. Lastly, Zamazenta, with its hard-hitting body press, unmatched physical bulk, team protection and wide guard, and effective immunity to intimidate, makes it a great threat in its own right. Our other up-and-comer in Terapagos is also quite strong and has some good matchups, but its heavy reliance on Terra makes it a suboptimal option, and just isn't quite in contention with these other 4. Our weather trio, Kyogre, Groudon, and Rayquaza Caridon, are all good, but again, not great, and are not seen as able to keep up with the insane power level of the top 4. What will players bring to Worlds? Being the toughest competition, it's likely they will only bring the toughest Pokemon, and looking at the stats, it seems this was the case. On August 16th, 2024, Worlds begins, with 694 players competing. The competition again here is fierce, as many players are using only the best of the best. Unfortunately, we don't have Day 1 statistics, but we do have Day 2 statistics. Urshifu comes out swinging with an incredible 61% usage rate. Truly one of the strongest Pokemon around, and the high usage rate reflects this. Another Pokemon tested by time that shows its worth is Rillaboom, with 37% usage. Coming up next are some newcomers to Scarlet and Violet, being Raging Bolt and Farigiraf. With a plethora of priority attacks to go around, combined with Farigiraf's success at last year's Worlds, it's no surprise this giraffe is a mainstay at Worlds 2024. Interestingly enough, Incineroar is 5th highest in usage, a low point for the strongest Pokemon of VGC. Perhaps its failure to win Worlds last year has many doubting its capability. Taking a look at the most used Restricteds, we do in fact see the top 4 we just mentioned. Calyrex Shadow and Ice in 1st and 2nd, with Miraidon and Zamazenta bringing up 3rd and 4th. Who will take it though? Of course, being the World Championships, we see the best players from each region duking it out head to head, and listing them all here would be a whole video in its own right. Fast forwarding through the grueling 8 rounds that comprised day 1, 3 players remained undefeated. Diego Ferreira, Hirofumi Kimura, and the famous Wolf Glick, perhaps the favorite to win the tournament, and take his second World Championships. Diego gets a round 1 bye, and then wins the first set he plays, whereas Hirofumi is knocked out on his first set. Wolf, however, finds himself bested in round 1 of Top Cut, getting taken out by the Canadian Carlin Van Severen, aka Sableye VGC. With the favorite of the tournament and arguably best player out of the running, the championship title is anyone's game. Other amazing players like Sohei Kumura, the 2023 World Champion, is also eliminated in round 1. Michael Kausch, the 2023 World's finalist, is eliminated in the semifinals this year. So who made it to the finals then? An unlikely candidate, Yuta Ishigaki, running his Calyrex Ice team, along with an incredible niche pick, Iron Valiant, finds himself in the finals. Of course, anything with wide guard has been proven to be good in restricted formats, but he takes Iron Valiant even further in its supportive role, boasting Encore and coaching as well. Choice Scarf Landorus is also an interesting choice, as they usually run Life Orb. Yuta actually has Life Orb on another Pokemon, Pelipper of all things, a very unique item for this Pokemon. Our other competitor in the finals is Luca Ceribelli, a strong competitor who has a number of top placements at his events, including 93rd at Worlds 2023 and 36th at Worlds 2022. This newer player has been putting in work at a number of events, and his hard work has finally paid off, landing him in the finals. He's running a Miraidon team. In the 2-month break of events, Miraidon has transitioned from running Terra Electric to Terra Fairy, and usually dropping Discharge for Dazzling Gleam as its spread attack of choice. And that's exactly what he's running. Luca's team of 6 Pokemon is also seen by 2 other players in Top Cut, but both of them were running Single Strike Urshifu, whereas Luca is running Rapid Strike. This team of 6 has been affectionately coined the Aerobega 6, as it's a very common pairing. So who will take the win at this year's Worlds? Both players put up a very strong fight, but Luca ends up taking it, cementing the Aerobega 6 as one of the strongest Regulation G teams. Normally that would be the end of our format. It's been played out for a number of months, with a number of regionals and events, and the biggest tournament, Worlds, has come to a close. And we actually do get an announcement of our next regulation, Regulation H, a very exciting format, one that excludes all Paradox Pokemon and Legendaries. Many players are excited for this format, as it's a big change up from the status quo. However, since this video is about Regulation G, feel free to check out my retrospective look at Regulation H if you're interested in seeing how that metagame developed. However, in addition to the announcement of Regulation H, it was stated that Regulation G would return after Regulation H in the start of 2025. Typically, after a single restricted format, we move into our double restricted format. So returning to Regulation G kind of felt like a slap in the face to many. We've already run through this regulation. Why are we going back to it and not moving on to a double restricted format? This will make Regulation G by far the longest running format of Scarlet and Violet. Has the meta not already been solved? Miraidon took the cake at Worlds, and only 4 restricteds seem to have had a chance at the title. But when Regulation G returned, the metagame continued to shift. Regulation G 2025 season. After the end of Regulation H, in the start of 2025, we again return to Regulation G. All eyes remain on Calyrex Shadow as the main threat of the format. Although it only had 2 wins from the previous set of regionals, that's still more than most other restricteds. Birmingham is our first event on January 18th, boasting 571 players. This first tournament coming off Worlds takes place a whole 6 months later, but players are not unprepared. Despite taking a break from Regulation G and players playing Regulation H, players are adjusting quite well. What better way to return to a format than use the team that won Worlds in that same format? That's right, William Basilino took the tournament with the fabled Arubega 6 that Luca Ceribelli won Worlds with. This truly is the team to beat, returning to the format. Both Kyogre and Groudon saw 2 teams make the top 8, something very much unexpected in this format, as we haven't seen them have much success previously. It seems these European players just loved opening their return to the format, gambling on 85% accurate Origin Pulses and Precipice Blades. Although this was the first tournament of the format, starting just a few hours later, thanks to time zones, another tournament happened on the same weekend, being the Rio de Janeiro Regionals in Brazil, which had 155 players. These 2 regions duked it out simultaneously for the first regional of the format. However, rather than seeing the same Arubega 6 winning in Rio as well, we see Juan Salareno take the cake with Calyrex Ice. Supported by 3 all-time staples in Amoonguss, Incineroar, and Urshifu, as well as Raging Bolt and a Choice Scarf Landorus, which is something we haven't seen too much of. This Urshifu, however, was Single Strike, while Rapid Strike still remained the most common. Being able to deal with both Calyrex swarms is incredibly impactful in Regulation G. In the top cut of Rio, we don't see a single Kyogre or Groudon at all. Some Weather Hopers are still coping for them to succeed. Moving into our next regional on January 25th, we find ourselves in San Antonio, Texas, the first tournament in North America of the season, and one that will not be forgotten anytime soon. A number of strong players attended, making this tournament nothing to scoff at, holding 602 players. Not record-breaking, but a very respectable showing. We see Calyrex Shadow usage drop quite sharply at this tournament, something we'll see more than once. The top 8 sees 4 Calyrex Ice, and 3 Weather Setters in 2 Koraidon and 1 Groudon. While these teams are nice and all, the top 2 players really innovated this time around, and it showed. Both Justin Tang and Shiliang Tang came out swinging with a very unique team. So unique and well built, in fact, that despite them running the exact same team, they ended up facing each other in the finals. This very unique Tail Room team included faster, slow Pokemon like Calyrex with quite a bit of a speed investment, as well as slower, fast Pokemon like Urshifu, Landorus, and Ogerpon. This Ogerpon was nearly maximum physical bulk and had the impish nature, something nobody else had tried beforehand. This allowed the team to invest more EVs into defenses to be able to tank hits that they otherwise wouldn't, while underspeeding fast teams with Trick Room or outspeeding slower ones with Tailwind from Roaring Moon. The Tang duo landing in the finals ended with Justin winning, no thanks to a couple of speed ties, but it earned him his 3rd regional championship, making 4 total regional championships for the Tangs. Calyrex Ice takes another win, leaving it winning 2 of the 3 tournaments this season so far, giving it 3 wins for the whole of Reg G, now in contention with Miraidon for the most. Will Cali Ice pull ahead to cement itself as the best restricted in the format? Cali Shadow still lurks not far behind, and everyone in their team prep for basically every tournament is still building around Calyrex Shadow and how to beat it. But some players still swear by it. If you want a little more detail about how unique and well played that this team was, feel free to check out my comprehensive match analysis between Shiliang Tang and one of his opponents in the top cut. Moving into South America on February 8th, we find ourselves in Mérida, Mexico. With an attendance of 182, these regionals from South America are starting to see some bigger competition. With Zamazenta just being mentioned, these players are here to show that the dog can hold its own, as we see 4 Zamazenta make their way into the top 8, with each team being quite unique. However, despite this, Daniel Nunes takes the win with another Miraidon team, allowing it to pull ahead with 4 total wins. This Miraidon team, however, is by far the most unique one we've seen yet. Terra Fairy is nothing new, but Assault Vest surely is. Combined with a Dozo Tatsugiri mode and a Terra Steel Goldengo, Pokemon we haven't seen much at all this regulation, but were very common in prior ones. Even Focus Sash Chi-Yu with Terra Normal Extreme Speed Dragonite, without Chien-Pao, are other rare sights to behold. Our next tournament is on February 21st, and it's time for the first international of the season. EUIC is held in London, UK. This is no ordinary tournament. Internationals are usually much larger than regionals, and this is no different. It's much bigger than a regional. In fact, it's much bigger than any international before as well. EUIC's attendance this time again breaks records for the largest Pokemon event, reaching a staggering 1,257 players. Reaching over 1,000 players is a first-time achievement for the community. With such a massive showing, huge stakes are on the line, and players flocked to the strongest meta picks to give themselves the best chances. Calyrex Shadow, the looming threat through the whole regulation, sees peak usage on day 2 at 27%, and was still the most used in day 1 at 19%. Calyrex Ice and Miraidon, however, were not far behind. Non-restricted Pokemon followed the same trend. Urshifu and Incineroar usage spiked on day 2, reaching 61 and 36%, with format mainstays in Amoonguss, Rillaboom, and Ogerpon Hearthflame all up. Not just the strongest Pokemon were used at this event, but the strongest players attended too. Regional champions such as Justin Tang, Stefan Mott, and Joseph Ugarte, international champions such as Marco Silva, Paul Chua, and Flavio Del Pido, and of course world champions like Luca Ceribelli and Wolf Glick were all present, and many, many more. Wolf Glick and Lucas Ceribelli actually played against each other in round 10 of the tournament, which was an incredible match to behold, and I also have a comprehensive match analysis for that set if you're interested in watching that. Scrolling through the top 512 players, this truly was an international championship, with players from all regions competing. In the top cut, we see Calyrex Shadow maintain its place as most used, while Miraidon and Kali Ice again not far behind. But what was not expected was the finals. None other than Wolf Glick clawed his way to the finals with perhaps his most unique team yet. Another Perish Trap team, this time centered around Koraidon and Sun, with partners in Fluttermane for speed control and Screamtail for Perish Song, as well as his Perish Trap staples in Incineroar, Amoonguss, and Gothitelle. This truly unique team has the crowds riled up. His opponent, however, is Dill Yeomans, a newcomer to the VGC scene, running a Miraidon team very similar to the Aerobega 6, but with Iron Treads and Incineroar over Whimsicott and Ogerpon Heartflame. Iron Treads and Screamtail are both Pokemon that are not seen very much in the metagame, especially Iron Treads, so this finals was truly a match to behold with two very unique teams. Wolf managed to take the set, but Dill was able to push it to a Game 3, making it a relatively close match. Koraidon wins its first event of the format, partially thanks to Wolf's innovation. Most Koraidon up to this point ran Clear Amulet and Collision Course to ignore Intimidate, but Wolf recognized that Life Orb and Close Combat did much more damage when not intimidated, and even when intimidated, the damage was about the same as Clear Amulet. This allowed Koraidon to output more damage than other Koraidon at the time, and this Life Orb set would become more common going forward. Taking a trip up north on March 8th, we find ourselves in the only regional in Canada for the season. It's the rainy city of Vancouver with 426 players in attendance. Despite the rainy disposition of the city, Kyogre usage was down in this tournament, but not too low all things considered. Overall, a relatively standard tournament with the usual suspects remaining common, but the winner of the event, Behzad Muntazir, took it all with Lunala of all things. Lunala has seen success in previous restricted formats, thanks to its access to its strong signature move Moongeist Beam, access to coverage in Moonblast, as well as strong support options like Trick Room and Wide Guard, which is invaluable in restricted formats. Behzad's team with Lunala involved another strong option Lunala has used in the past, Power Herb with Meteor Beam. This allows it to remove Pokemon like Incineroar immediately that would otherwise give it trouble, and it powers it up for its other attacks. Also found on the team was Indeedee, and Lunala had Expanding Force, giving it a strong spread attack as well. Very similar to the Tangs winning team from San Antonio with Calyrex Ice, this team also has Tailwind with Booster Energy Roaring Moon, Landorus, Ogerpon Heartflame, and Urshifu. I wouldn't be surprised if this team took quite a bit of inspiration from that one, running a sort of Tail Room mode. At this same weekend on March 8th, Brazil also had another tournament in Fortaleza with 117 players in attendance. Since this tournament was at the same time, we don't see Lunala's influence spread here yet. Our winner, Bruno Rebello, brings Koraidon to yet another victory with a hard Sun team, including two Paradox Pokemon and Chi-Yu that all benefit from Koraidon Sun. Koraidon was touted as one of the weaker restricteds at the outset of the format, but now it's tied for third place, racking up 2 wins very quickly, putting it on par with Zamazenta and Shadow Rider. With the format winding down, we find ourselves back in Stockholm, Sweden, for the second tournament here in this regulation, something we have not seen in Scarlet and Violet, having the same format in the same location twice. This time it brings 344 players, so about 100 more than last time. Last year's winner, Michael Kelsch, won with Zamazenta, and he's back to defend his title, this time with a Calyrex Ice hard Trick Room team, including Smeargle and Indeedee to provide maximum support. Jamie Boyd is another strong contender this time around, who again innovated with his take on a Koraidon Sun team, this time adding Brute Bonnet and Heatran, both Pokemon rarely seen in the format. Brute Bonnet gets a defense boost in the Sun, making it incredibly bulky, giving it a lot of staying power to fire off Spores and Rage Powders, while having Sucker Punch to threaten both Calyrexes. His Heatran also ran the Zoom Lens, giving it an incredibly accurate Magma Storm, allowing it to trap opponents on the field and deal damage over time. He made his way to the quarterfinals, where he was eliminated, placing 4th. Looking to our finals, again we see Michael Kelsch, and he's pit against none other than Eric Rios, a very strong player and former international champion. He's running his take on a Lunala team, and again a pretty unique one. Rather than use Lunala's other tried and true tools, he forgoes Wide Guard, Trick Room, and Meteor Beam, instead focusing on a Calm Mind set, allowing it to set up and fire off powerful attacks later. This is very much a balanced team overall, with supportive options in Incineroar, Rillaboom, and Screamtail, as well as strong speed control in Tornadus. This is a formidable team that needs an experienced pilot, which it has in Eric. In an incredibly tight best-of-3 set, Michael takes the game, guiding Calyrex to its 4th win of the format, pushing it to a tie for first with Miraidon. Again, this match was very incredible to watch, and I also have a comprehensive match analysis for this set, so feel free to check that one out as well. Going down under to Brisbane in March 29th, we have our first and only event of the regulation in Australia, and this brought a total of 217 players. Quite a lot of Australian players attended this event, with some incredible Japanese players as well, like Shohei Kimura, our 2023 world champion, who is running the iconic Aerobega 6, as well as Joji Kaida, who won the global event just a week prior, and has a number of other top placements. However, Diego Ferreira takes the event. Someone who's been playing for a number of years finally earns his first place finish. With another hard Trick Room team involving Calyrex Ice and Ursaluna, this pushes Calyrex Ice to 5 wins for the format, pulling ahead of Miraidon. Winding down the format with our last event in South America, we find ourselves in Monterrey, Mexico. Again, a number of local players made top cut, but the finals is filled by 2 American household names in Riley Factura and Carson Confer, both regional champions, with a very interesting finals of Miraidon versus Koraidon. Riley guided Miraidon to a win with a unique team featuring Iron Crown and Ursaluna. Carson, however, made a good showing with a team quite similar to Jamie Boyt's from Stockholm, including Brute Bonnet, but he brings Tinkaton over Heatran, a pick in this format that no one else has even considered. This brings Miraidon to 5 wins, tying it with Calyrex Ice for the most wins of the format. Our last event of the format lands in Seville, Spain on April 26th, with an attendance of 467. Our restricted lineup sees Miraidon and Calyrex vying for the most wins at 5 each. Will one of them take this win to take the crown and become the king of the format? Looking at our usage, we see both Koraidon and Lunala reach 4th and 5th place in restricted usage, likely compounded factors of the recent Lunala hype and Koraidon seeing increased usage after its EUIC win. However, the tournament is taken not by either of these two, and not even by our 2 running favorites in Miraidon and Calyrex Ice, but Zamazenta. Finally, the restricted with abnormally high Latin America usage all format sees another win in its home turf to close out the regulation. Regulation G was an interesting format, and one that many would argue simply ran too long, especially by Scarlet and Violet standards. But even with its long runtime and long break with Reg H, we still saw immense innovation throughout its runtime. From the Tang Duo's Tailroom team with a fast Calyrex, to Wolf's maximum damage Suicide Koraidon, and at the tail end of the format, Eric Rios' Lunala Balance team seemed to be quite strong, and it seemed as though there was still more to explore. But Regulation I is finally here, and we can see how these restricteds interact with each other within a team. Will lower tier restricteds from Reg G like Lunala, Kyogre, Groudon, and Zacian see more usage moving into Reg I? Or will the top picks dominate the format more so than they did here? There's only one way to find out as we start our foray into Regulation I. Thanks for coming along for this ride of looking back at Regulation G, and a huge thanks to all the patrons for supporting the channel.